Hello, everyone. This is John Stewart Rabon. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this little video. We have all successfully navigated the regular season. We're now into the playoffs. Playoffs are different, they are more demanding, but as we all know, they're also a lot more fun. We are officiating at the highest level. And for those of you who are watching who do get to be a part of playoffs this week or in future assignments, congratulations. These are the most important games of the year, and for me personally, I'm sure many of you, this is why we officiate in the first place, is the opportunity to work these games. And because of that, we as the instructional team put in a little extra work this week for you guys. So tonight, or in this video, we're going to be breaking down some film, talking through some specific mechanics, and hopefully improving our consistency as an association. All right. So I think we're all invested in being the best association that we can possibly be, and we want to be able to officiate these playoffs with the highest level of consistency and the highest level of professionalism. So let's look at some plays, shall we? Okay, you may have seen Doug's email earlier today about how we're going to officiate, when to stop the clock, and when to wind the clock. So we have a situation here. First, as you can tell, this is an eight-man game. This is why so many people are standing on the field. The out-of-bounds line is hard to see, so I just made this mark here so you know where it is. But this is late in the game scenario where we want to make sure that we are correct on what we're going to do with the clock. Okay, so we're going to watch this play here. We're going to have a quick out play. Time's running down. Okay, and we wind the clock. So let's watch it again. There's our line. Quick out. Boom. Okay, so we believe that the best thing that we should do here is to kill this clock. Okay, so what goes into when do you kill the clock or when do you stop the clock? We have a player here who still has control of his body. He is an upright player. He's running out of bounds, trying to get out of bounds. He's still upright. We want to kill the clock in this scenario, right? Even as this player is pushed, this player could have ostensibly cut up field. And at that point, we want to kill the clock because the player went out of bounds on his own. We would wind the clock if the player's being tackled, being driven out of bounds sideways or backwards. In that scenario, if he's being tackled backwards or being driven backward, we'd want to wind the clock, right? So in this scenario here, we want to kill the clock. And if we're not sure what to do, the main thing that we want to do is kill the clock. So when in doubt, kill the clock, okay? So let's live in a world where you guys didn't remember what I just told you 10 seconds ago. Let's see it in writing first. I think we can all learn a little better if we see it both visually in terms of an illustration and actually see it written down. So when do we stop the clock? If we have an upright player running out of bounds or trying to get out of bounds, even with the push, and that player is still upright, in that scenario, we are going to kill the clock. Okay, so kill the clock. If the player is being driven out of bounds backwards or sideways from the field of play, we're going to roll progress and wind the clock. So the player is being tackled out of bounds and his progress was stopped inbounds. At that point, we would wind the clock. Okay, and if you're not sure what you're going to do, when in doubt, always err on the side of killing the clock. Okay. Okay, next play. I know I said at the beginning of the year, here's a play I've never seen before, and that was correct. Interestingly enough, I've now seen this play twice in one season, so that's fun. But before I get to that, let's talk about something else first. As you can see, we have a team in scrimmage kick formation here. Let's let this run a little bit. All right, so it looks like we're snapping from about the 27. We have a wide receiver down here on the end, more than a yard off the ball, not breaking the waist of the snapper. By rule, this is an illegal formation. We have 5 men in the backfield. But according to our mechanics manual, we don't want to call this unless it's particularly egregious, correct? Especially this early in the game when we're in the first quarter. So this is called for illegal formation, but at this point in the game, there's no real advantage gained by the wide receiver down here or the gunner. We want to let this go, okay? An issue with this is not only the fact that it was called, it was who called it, if we keep playing this and we see this is the white hat that called this penalty, right? So if you're a white hat, leave this to your wings, especially on punt plays where you have gunners down there. Let your wings figure out they're on or off. If we have a situation where we had a punter and a guy in motion and three personal protectors back there, then the white hat can come in and say, okay, this is a legal formation. But we're talking about a gunner down at the end. Leave that to the wings. All right. Now, we keep letting this roll. We see this ball is going to bounce and whoop, there it goes. All the way back to the original line of scrimmage at the 27, where this punter decides to illegally kick the ball. So we have illegal kicking here by K, and we got this covered. 1, 2, 3 flags. Excellent job. You see our esteemed president there. Let's go back and watch it again. There it goes, and boom. Okay, now, how do we enforce this penalty? If we let this run for a second, we're going to see the ball is recovered by K at around the 32, okay? So, remember, when we enforce these penalties, this punt plays are always tricky, or scrimmage kick plays are always tricky in terms of enforcement. We do have the extra exception to where a foul by K can be enforced at the succeeding spot if K is not next to put the ball in play. R never touched this punt, so R does have the right to have the ball at the 32. Okay, one question you might have is this first touching? Could they have it at the 27? And the answer is no, because we know that first touching has to be is touching by K beyond the line of scrimmage, and this touching is in or behind the line of scrimmage. This is not first touching. The first touching here would be technically the spot of recovery, which is the 32. Okay, so how are we going to enforce this penalty? Well, we can tack this on from the end. We know illegally kicking the ball is a 10-yard penalty, so we can tack that on from the 32, and we would have our ball 1st and 10 at the K 22, right? We're going to ignore the illegal formation. That is a 5-yard penalty from the previous spot, or the spot where the kick is recovered. But since it's only 5 and the illegal kicking happened at the line of scrimmage, we're going to ignore that for penalty enforcement, and we're going to give R the ball 1st and 10 at the K 22. Okay, this is kind of similar to something we saw on a previous play. Let's roll this for a second. All right, so what is good about this is we have both of these guys saying their receiver is off. Clearly, one of these two guys is supposed to be on. I assume this guy is supposed to be on because of this tight end right here. He should be on the line, but he has him off. If you notice, looks like we're snapping about the 29. He's about the 27 and a half. This is called, one thing we want to notice about this, and you can't see it, but I can. This is actually play number 9 in the game. So again, unless it's particularly egregious this early in the game, this is something that we want to work with our receivers about per the mechanics manual. But it is good that both of them are signaled off, but this is just something that we want to let go at this point in the game. If we've been working with these players throughout the game and they still can't get it right, at that point we would want to call that penalty. Some of you got to see all my tabs, so congratulations. We let this run, and there are our flags. Okay, there we go. Okay, on this one, as we can see, we have a regular scrimmage play. We got a trips formation over here. What are our pre-snap keys on this play? Well, we know that this line judge down here has it pretty easy. He has this tight end. Head linesman has a number 1 receiver down here. White hat's going to be peeking through this quarterback and get this left tackle. The back judge is going to have the number 3 receiver right here. And per our mechanics book, the line judge and the back judge are both going to have secondary responsibility for this number 2 receiver down here, right? So if you could tell, both the number 1 and number 3 receivers are not being pressed. Their defenders are lined up 7 yards um, deep from where the number 1 and number 3 receivers were lined up. The one we got to really worry about at the snap is this number 2 receiver right here, and that is where we should be focusing our attention. Okay, so if we let this run a little bit, there's our number 2 receiver. We let this run. We see this number 2 receiver blocks his guy. The number 1 receiver takes what looks like a little slant, takes it all the way to the house. Okay, so if we are focusing on this number 2 receiver because he's the only one being pressed, we could have gotten this OPI call. I think it's pretty obvious that pretty clear that the ball is thrown well beyond the line of scrimmage, so we wouldn't have to worry about that because that can always be tricky. But here we have a number 2 receiver blocking downfield. This should have been called for offensive pass interference. And if we're focusing on this number 2 guy right here, we might have gotten that right. All right, just to show you what we have in our mechanics manual, kind of what we talked about before. This line judge has primary responsibility on number 1, back judge has primary on number 3, and they both share secondary responsibility on this number 2 receiver. So this is just to show you what is in the mechanics book as to how we are supposed to officiate. Okay, same game here. Let's go ahead and let this run for a second. All right, we're going to look at this. We're going to focus on this safety over here on the left-hand side, and boom. Okay, let's look at that one more time. Oh, okay. So first, we need to call this, right? So this is a foul. I think that we are all in agreement that needs to be called. There is no flag on this play, but this is one we need to get. What I'm going to say, and the reason I'm bringing this up is umpires, don't be afraid to call this. If we're a little quicker turning around, we could actually see that and get it, right? So I know it's technically not our responsibility as umpires. However, if we look around and we don't see any flags on the ground, we should be getting this and calling it and being a crew saver, right? So let's be, and I'm guilty of this too, let's be a little quicker turning around, and we might have been able to see this and save the crew. Per the commissioner, if this player was ejected, this would have been 100% supported for an ejection on this play. But that's that. Okay, so this is a game early in the year. Roll a little bit, probably see where we're going with this. We're going to have an interception, and we're going to look at the contact made by this defensive end, and we want to know if this is a block in the back or a blind side block. So let's follow this, and boom, there it is. Okay, so what do we know about illegal blocks in the back and blindside blocks? Technically, all blindside blocks are illegal blocks in the back, right? The question is, do we want to upgrade that block in the back to a blindside block, right? Not all blocks in the back are blindside blocks, but all blindside blocks are illegal blocks in the back. And there it is again. In this play, this is a blindside block. It's a blindside block for a couple of reasons. One, this player is what we call swimming upstream. This player is going towards, or this blocker is going towards his own goal line. All right. If a player initiates a block when his path is toward or parallel to his own end line or his own goal line, and makes forceful contact to his opponent with his helmet, forearm, or shoulder, unless this is basically right at the line of scrimmage near the snap, that's going to be a blindside block. Okay, a block in the back is going to be when a player blocks an opponent from behind in the back above the waist, or uses his hands or arms to push an opponent from behind in a manner that affects his movement. Except in close line play, this would be a block in the back. But on this play, we have a blindside block. Okay, we have a blindside block on this play. We have a player swimming upstream, and boom, there it is. Missed the terrible flag throw, but that's okay. You might be asking yourself, how did I know all that information off the top of my head about whether a foul is an illegal block in the back or a blindside block? It's because I was reading it. It is a foul if a player initiates a block when his path is toward or parallel to his own inline and makes forceful contact to his opponent with his helmet, forearm, shoulder, or shoulder, unless the contact occurs in close line play prior to the ball leaving that area. This is a blindside block. If a player blocks an opponent from behind in the back above the opponent's waist or uses his hands or arms to push an opponent from behind in a manner that affects his movement, except in close line play, this is a block in the back. A block in the back can be upgraded to a blindside block. Okay, all blindside blocks are blocks in the back, but not vice versa. Okay, we have a lot of stuff going on with this play. All right, so I'm just gonna run it, and we'll try to find some stuff. We're gonna have a quarterback dropping back to pass. Okay, we got interception. Okay, we got a bobble and a juggle. So back judge at this point, probably first thing that comes to his mind is momentum. In a play like this, though, we're going to just give the touchback if that player goes down to the end zone there, as tight as that was. But now we got the return. And what happens on the return? Let's look at this guy first. There's that. That's a hold. And now let's look at this guy right here. That's a hold. And then now let's look at this guy right here. And we have a blindside block. Okay, that's a blindside block. All right, now, they did get a dead ball foul out of this, but none of these three were called. And I am putting that 100% on the, well, not 100%. I'm putting 80% on the umpire and 20% on the back judge, right? So if you're the umpire in this scenario, as soon as you see an interception or as soon as you see a turnover, you start looking for blocks. Your antenna goes up. You don't have any ruling on forward progress, right? All you're doing at this point is looking for blocks. Your antenna goes up and you start finding stuff, okay? Back judge is trying not to get killed back here. Back judge also has to think about momentum. But once that's gone from his mind, he can start looking at blocks too. Referee, as we know, has goal line responsibility. And as we know from our referees, they have to start running well before anybody else on the field would have to get to the goal line. I cracked myself up. And then our wings here are going to have to do the reverse mechanics and get the spot. All right. So if you're the umpire in the situation, as soon as you see that ball picked off, start looking for stuff. Right. So this might be hard to get. Okay. So this umpire is looking at the ball down here. At this point, this umpire is to start looking for blocks. That one might be tough to get because it's right after the thing. But as you notice, what are we looking at here? We're not looking at this action. We're looking at the ball carrier. We need to be looking at blocks. Whoop, there's that. And then we're still looking at the ball carrier down here. And we totally missed that, right? So if we are looking at blocks and not ball watching, we might be able to get one of those or two of those, at least one of them. So let's not get caught ball watching out there. Let's go and let's find some stuff to officiate. There's 5 of us and 22 of them. We need to cover as many of them as we possibly can, right? Okay. Okay, so this is my game. I want to say this is the first or second week of the year. I saw this action and decided not to call on it. And then I talked to some people on higher levels than me, and they're like, "You absolutely should have called this." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So let's look at this left guard here. We see there is a takedown there. Now, the reason I passed on this, if you notice, that ball gets out pretty fast, and I judged that action would not have affected the rest of the play. The moral of the story here is it is correct that we should have the philosophy that if action doesn't affect the play, we don't call it. One major exception to that rule is a takedown, right? So this is pretty clearly a takedown. Whoop, there you go. Throws him on the ground. That's a hold. We should have called that. And by we, I mean me, because I was the umpire on this game. So call all takedowns. This is clearly offensive holding. Let's make sure we get those, okay, no matter where they are on the field. All right, I know Tim Kiefer came into the half hour on this, so we're going to bang it into your head some more. Um, let's look at this. We're snapping at about the 21, right? We're going to look at the right guard here. It's hard to tell because we're so far away. We're closer to God than the players in this clip, but that's okay. Um, look at the right guard. There's the right guard. Okay, so we stop this. We know our mechanic. The rule book says 2, but the mechanics manual says call it at 3. Um, as the umpire here, I said, well, this player is at least 3 yards downfield when this ball was thrown. And it's correct, he was at least 3 yards downfield. But if you're an umpire, this will get you more trouble than it is worth. So if you're an umpire, leave this alone and leave it to the wings. Even though this is a correct call, right? Even by the mechanics manual, this is a correct call. We want to leave this alone if we are an umpire, and there's me. This is week 1. This is me not pre-snapping properly and trying to figure out where the 3 yards is. So also, if you are a wing, it might be a good idea to figure out where your 3 yards are, right? Have that in your pre-snap. But again, moral of the story, if you're an umpire on these RPOs, you can leave it alone. There are certain scenarios that aren't RPOs where you're more than happy to call this, right? I've had plays this year before, I'm looking around, the ball's thrown, and I'm 8 yards back, and the offensive lineman's standing right next to me. You could call that. But on these tight RPOs, just leave this alone if you're the umpire, right? Okay. All right, last play. This is we're going to end on this one. I think I showed this in a meeting earlier. We had this play here where we have a pass to the back of the end zone. We got a tip ball, and then we got a lot of stuff going on. What do? Let's watch it again. Complete or incomplete? What do we got? Let's see what the officials say. What do the officials rule? Okay, so what we want to get out of this is there's nothing wrong on officials, and it's actually preferred. If you don't know, stop the clock on this type of play and ask for help, right? Stop the clock. You have a back judge and a line judge right here who are both responsible for ruling catch, no catch. The last thing we want to do is have 2 different signals going on, right? We want them to come together, stop the clock, and make a decision. It looks way better, and it looks like we know what we're doing. This does not look like we know what we're doing, right? So let's come together and make sure we get on the same page. They ruled that this was a completed catch. However, it should not have been. This player never had firm possession of the ball. You might be able to say that the receiver caught the ball, but as we know, catching the ball and possessing the ball are 2 different things, and possessing the ball never occurred on this play. Okay? Those are all the clips I had. I want to wish all of you the very best luck this week, and all of you who will be getting assignments throughout the rest of the postseason. It's cliche, but it's cliche because it's true. Let's all be the best team on the field for every game that we have the rest of this season. Let's all communicate properly and effectively, unlike the officials in the previous clip. Let's all use our OTOs efficiently. Let's all use our pre-games to prepare ourselves for anything that could possibly happen in the upcoming game. Good luck to you all. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you all very soon.